You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics and public policy because we have as our guest Dan Proft, who started the decade in 2001, 2002, working as a publicist for Pat O'Malley. You all remember Pat O'Malley. He was the conservative candidate in the Republican primary in 2002. We won't spend much of the show on that, but by the end of the decade, what was Dan Proft doing? He was running for governor without the blessing of Pat O'Malley. That would be news.
Yeah, not really.
We're not going to spend much of the show on that. What we are going to be talking about in this show, other than Dan Proft, of course, is a WLS radio talk show host. You find him almost every Saturday from 12 to 2 with Bruce Wolf. That would be right, on WLS.
That's correct.
The Big 89, 890 AM. Sometimes Notre Dame football, what is the word? It preempts. There we go, the preemptive doctrine. We could do a little bit on that, you know. So you will find Bruce and Dan there every Saturday, and a real treat. We're taping this on November 14th. If you see this through the magic of the internet by the 15th, you'll see Dan Proft and Bruce Wolf on Monday, 9/11, unusual time.
Yeah, 9/11 on, we're filling in on WLS on Monday.
Filling in.
Yeah, right.
From 9 to 11.
We do a lot of spot filling work too.
And the week of the 22nd, November 22nd, you have a real treat because every day of that week, if you get up at 5 o'clock and listen till 9 o'clock in the morning, you can hear 20 hours of that week of Dan Proft and Bruce Wolf, right?
That's right.
All right, enough of the plugging stuff. So, you know, talking about Barack Obama, we're going to go back and forth federal and domestic issues here until everybody gets quite confused. But talking about Dan Proft, I mean, Barack Obama, the thing of it is that, would you say, you know, Barack Obama is in the process, and by the end of the show, we will prove that he has adopted the foreign policies of George W. Bush, and since Barack Obama, in a sense, some would say, was repudiated, or his policies in the midterm elections of 2010, using the transitive properties we all know, that would show that George W. Bush, his foreign policies were repudiated.
Right, that's an interesting.
I don't know what that means.
Interesting use of the transitive property. Obviously, the election was a referendum on Barack Obama's domestic policies, bailouts of public sector unions and big banks, profligate spending, tax increases, government intrusions into areas of life that people summarily rejected, beginning with healthcare being the most obvious. And that's why he lost the Congress. That's why he came very close to losing the Senate, and that's why his approval ratings are where they are.
They always, almost always, in the midterm elections, after the first term of a president has started, he or she, be neutral there, loses big time, right? Almost always. That midterm election is a big loss in the House and the Senate. I don't know why that happens, but you would agree that's a pattern we've had for about 200 years or so?
Yeah, it's a pattern, and I mean, I don't want to...
So a lot of that loss was simply part of that pattern. He lost more because of what you said.
Well, he lost more, and I mean, all that really happened was we went back to pre-2006 numbers in the House and the Senate, or certainly in the House. Republicans,
not quite the Senate.
Not quite the Senate, but... But it's bigger than just a numbers game. I mean, you look at the policy path that this administration has charted, and people are rejecting that. So if he continues on this path of big government takeovers and intrusion into all aspects of economic life in particular, he will be a one-term president. So
will he
we'll see.
Will he? You said if. So will he pull a Clinton, so to speak, and
I don't think
modify and work with the Congress and become a two-term president?
I don't think so. I mean,
I think he will be a one-termer.
Barack
Obama.
I think this is all, elections are matchups. So I think a lot of it depends on who the Republicans nominate.
Put your neck out in the wood.
But I think as I said, I think I'm putting my neck out by saying I think he is going to chart the same course, and I think if he does, he will be a one-termer. I think, look, what you're going to see happen is Obama is going to spend the next 2 years attempting to largely implement what was passed in the first two, and Republicans are going to be spending a lot of time trying to repeal, or at least repeal aspects, if not kind of the entirety of certain pieces of legislation, and hopefully advance some big ideas about entitlement reform in particular, and getting the economy growing again that will frame the 2012 race.
But if he does get the economy going, or if the economy gets going on its own by 2012, can that do it for Barack Obama? Irrespective of whether his policies were good or bad, if the economy's good, as Bill Clinton said, it's the economy, stupid. he'll get the credit, he'll be reelected, right?
I think if the economy improves, that certainly heightens his chances. But the economy was pretty good around 2000 when Al Gore lost the presidency. So again, it's matchups. And I think if the Republicans nominate somebody that provides a very stark contrast to Obama, that brings to the table skills and a record of accomplishment that he does not possess and will likely not possess by the end of his first term, then Republicans have a very good chance.
So, your pick, your preference is Governor Mitch Daniels from Indiana?
Correct. Yes.
And because you like his policies of keeping taxes low, spending low, regulation low.
Well, it's more than that.
Pretty much that. Too?
Well, I mean,
you like his age, his maturity. What is he, about 70 or something?
No. He's about 60. But
60? You
yeah,
sure?
Yeah.
Older.
I mean, he may be early 60s,
He told
but
me,
he's right there.
Dan. He told me just a
He told
a
you.
year ago.
He told you he was 70.
He said he'd be a geriatric or something like that. When I asked him if he'd run for president in 2012, he said he'll be a geriatric.
That's just his aw shucks routine, like a lot of politicians have.
Look, so he's a phony? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying
he just plays aw shucks.
I'm saying that this is the dance that prospective presidential candidates do. But Mitch Daniels, it's more than just kind of low taxes, less regulation, smaller government. He's really been a creative thinker on the big issues. I mean, he has implemented property tax reform in the state. He has a good story to tell in Indiana in a down economy. He's brought foreign investment into the state of Indiana more than any other state in the nation during the last 3 years.
Pat Quinn claims he's been taking companies from Indiana to Illinois. Is Pat Quinn wrong?
Yeah, Pat Quinn is wrong on almost everything. But
except he won. We'll get back to that.
So a lot of people who are wrong win. I mean, we have one in the White House that doesn't. It's.
So you don't believe in the political market, just the economic market?
Getting back to Mitch Daniels, he's taken on the public sector unions. He's implemented a market reform of healthcare at the state level. This is somebody who had a successful career as an executive in the private sector with Eli Lilly. He's had a successful career as a governor of Indiana, two-term governor. I think he provides.
He worked in the Reagan administration?
He worked in the Reagan administration, OMB. I mean, this is kind of a policy wonk that communicates big ideas very simply, very succinctly, in a way that people can understand it.
And a good family background. What is just one wife?
Yeah, right. Yes.
There you
go. But
that's important to the Republican Party.
Well, what's important is that he provides a perfect negative contrast to Barack Obama. So where Obama is all sizzle and no steak, Mitch Daniels is all steak and no sizzle. And I think again with the
sizzle counts. You don't think sizzle
it's not
counts
that
in politics?
it's not that it counts. It's contrast. So you present people with a choice in the way that John McCain didn't.
Okay, but I've heard you say
Daniels
issue
does that.
contrast before. I've never heard you say charisma contrast. So lack of charisma is a good thing because it contrasts with the charisma of Barack Obama? Is that what you're telling me?
It can be.
Yeah.
It can be. Somebody
Can you
say,
give any examples of where that was true?
Look, I can. So somebody like Daniels essentially becomes the adult in the room.
No, but give me an example where that's worked. Have we ever elected a non-charismatic president because of his contrast with a charismatic president?
Well, we elect non-charismatic politicians all the time. I mean, look at Illinois.
Not for president.
Paul Simon wasn't exactly knocking the world over with his charisma. I mean, there's a lot of instances in terms of non-charismatic.
Paul's a bit of an exception, Paul Simon, yeah.
Well, not in terms of non-charismatic
senator,
politicians.
well, I guess that's true for U.S. senator.
This is why P.J. O'Rourke says that politics is like Hollywood for ugly people. I mean, you elect a lot of people who are kind of disarming, non-charismatic
Let's go
figures.
back just the last 3 decades. Ronald Reagan, charismatic, right?
Yeah.
George Herbert Walker Bush, not so much.
Right.
Bill Clinton, charismatic, right? George Bush, W. Bush, not so much.
Right.
They're ready now for another
Jimmy
charismatic
Carter.
president, right?
Jimmy Carter.
Charismatic, that was Barack Obama.
Richard Nixon, Lyndon Johnson.
We have lurched on the truth for the last 3 decades. We have alternated charismatic, so forth. You're right. We had have a charismatic president now. By that reasoning, the next one will be Mitch Daniels, non-charismatic.
Yeah, I'm not sure I buy that pattern, but I do buy the importance of contrast.
All right, so you're saying it's all about domestic policy, and it's interesting because who would have thunk a year or two ago that foreign policy wouldn't matter at all? Iraq doesn't matter, Afghanistan doesn't matter, terrorism doesn't matter. It's all the economy, and that's all.
Well, I think it matters, but
In the last election, that was pretty much it. Foreign policy didn't count. Nobody gave a rat's ass, Nobody cared at all about Iran. There was this major nuclear threat emerging, The Bush administration did little about that. Obama administration does little about it, and it wasn't even an issue in the midterm election.
Well, look, I think that, people assess threats kind of by order of magnitude, and the greatest threat that most Americans are facing right now is their own kind of personal self-sustainability in terms of keeping their job, keeping their home, the economic opportunities for their children, and so that's where their immediate focus is. To the extent that the issue with Iran, for example, is not addressed in a substantive way, and that threat grows, then that will become more of a conversation for the 2012 election cycle. But in the midterms in particular, where you're electing a new Congress, people are focused on economic issues, and when you have 9.5% unemployment, that shouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah, and the way to get unemployment down is to have more tax cuts, or at least not to repeal the Bush tax cuts of 2001 and 2003. Is that right?
The Bush tax cut should be extended. I would also stop the 33% increase in the capital gains tax. I would roll back the taxes that are associated with Obamacare, including a capital gains tax increase on top of that. I mean, the bottom line is this.
And the taxes on medical equipment that are coming online. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
that'll be passed on to consumers and raise the cost of health care.
Right. The bottom line is this.
There ain't no such thing as a free lunch.
No, the bother line is this. We need to lower taxes on work and investment. If you want to see more of it, lower taxes on work and investment.
Is there ever a limit? Because, I think it was Bob Novak who said, God put Republicans on earth to cut taxes, right? I think he said that. And do you agree? God put Republicans on earth to cut taxes?
I think it's bigger than just cutting taxes.
Yeah, he might have put Republicans there for some other reasons. But I mean, somebody might be critical of Republicans for almost always saying it's a good idea to cut taxes. Would that be correct? That is, no matter what the time, what the time of the day is, what the month of the year is, if you ask a conservative Republican about taxes, they will always say, let's cut taxes.
Well, where taxes are at the federal and in Illinois at the state level, it has always been a good time to cut taxes because taxes have been way too high on work and investment. So if you want to spur entrepreneurial activity, then you need to reward it, and that's what we're not doing. And that's why even the Deficit Commission just came out with a recommendation to lower our national corporate tax because it's uncompetitive with the rest of the world. So this isn't about Republican, Democrat. This is about common sense.
The Deficit Commission still wants to raise taxes, don't they, on that? There's going to be a tax for every $3 in cut in spending. As I understand it, they're proposing a $1 increase in taxes.
I understand that I'm not adopting all of the recommendations of the Deficit Commission.
Would that be a bad balance? Then?
Yes.
$3 cut in spending, $1 increase in taxes.
Yes, it would be because
you don't think there should be any increase in taxes?
It's a false trade-off, which is what they usually do with these deficit commissions. It's a false trade-off because they bought into the conventional pablum that we need a combination of spending cuts and tax increases, and the tax increases always come to finance the status quo, and the spending cuts are always ephemeral.
But as you point out, they're cutting the corporate rate significantly.
They're proposing to. But only from 36 to 26, which is, we need to go further down than that.
But that'll make it pretty low relative to other countries.
No. I mean, look at Canada's proposing cutting their corporate tax in half down to 15%.
Where's Canada right now?
About 30.
Okay, so relative to the current rates, it would make us lower than Canada.
Yes, but we're the second highest. We have the second highest corporate tax at the federal level in the world.
Okay, so you're saying they should go further, but you like the direction.
I like that one proposal. And what I'm saying is
also marginal rates of taxation by that Deficit Commission are proposed to be cut significantly as well. Yeah, you must agree with that.
I do.
So you compliment them on that.
I do.
They're doing what you say.
Well,
they're raising the incentive to work, save, and invest on
those specific proposals, right?
And on the other hand, they're removing all these deductions. Is that a good idea?
I think the tax code should be simplified. I do.
So you agree with that?
I'm not, a lot of the deductions and loopholes are used to basically dish out favors to specialized protected classes and industries and companies. And that's that crony capitalism that I reject wholeheartedly. It should be simple, and taxes should be simple, the code should be simple, and rates should be low.
And so it's a politician's game. They like to play this, have a very complex tax code, and they can trade contributions, get contributions for deductions, essentially.
Yeah.
That's why the House Ways and Means Committee is so popular, because those folks get to get contributions for things, deductions, and other things they hand out.
Yeah,
right? That's how the game plays.
And it's the Accountants Full Employment Act.
But so actually, this Deficit Commission, it was the Erskine Bowles and Alan Simpson, former U.S. Senator Alan Simpson, Republican,
from
and
Wyoming,
of course
right.
Erskine Bowles, former honcho in the
Clinton
administration, Democrat. Would you say they were kind of bold in what they came up with?
I'd say there were some things in there that were good and conversation starters, but not bold enough where they need to be, which is where all the money's being spent, which is on the big entitlement programs, Medicare, Social
I
Security.
mean, they're not retrenching or cutting back on those entitlements as much as they need to.
It's not cutting back, it's completely rethinking
Reforming.
them, the way that Paul Ryan has laid out in the Roadmap for America.
But they are following a path that Rostenkowski and Reagan took. They agreed the compromise was, I think in the 86 Tax Reform Act, that you had further reductions in rates of taxation. And what Rostenkowski like is you remove some deductions, i.e. that's really raising taxes. Do you see it that way?
Yeah. Well,
was that the Rostenkowski-Reagan deal that went on in the 80s? In part?
In part, yeah.
And that's what's going on here, right?
Well, nothing is going on here. This is just a commission.
Proposal.
Yeah.
And actually not even the commission, it's just the two co-chairmen,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So unlikely to pass, it requires 14 pass of that commission, right?
The first
requires 14 members to agree.
I mean, without getting into the weeds on this, the
Okay.
first real test of the Obama administration is going to be what they do with the 2001, 2003 tax cuts. Do they extend those marginal tax cuts, or do they try and play a game with income earners 250,000 or over, or what do they do?
So you're saying, do they extend it for all? Because obviously they say they want to keep the middle class tax cuts, which means for the lower 98%, that is all family income earners, other than people earning more than 250,000.
Right.
That was their proposal before. The Republicans say it should be for all. Now that the Republicans have control of the House, do you think what you'll get is a permanent extension of the Bush middle class tax cuts, and you'll get a temporary extension, maybe 2 years, for the high income Bush tax cuts?
I think you get a temporary extension for all. That's what I think the
what you think?
compromise is going to be, but that's just a guess.
2 years. And that's good enough. If you're a Republican, you're optimistic and say you'll have the presidency, you'll have the Senate by then. So why not agree for 2 years?
It's something that brings everybody through the next election cycle, and then you can have the fight all over again, depending on what the landscape looks like.
And they're not going to try, the Democrats aren't going to try to do anything with the lame duck session to see if they have enough votes to sneak something by, which would cut out the high income tax cuts but extend the middle class tax cuts.
I'd be surprised if they did that, because there'll be political hell to pay if they try to do anything cute and anything kind of that big during the
Do you
lame duck
expect
session.
anything significant coming out of the lame duck session?
No.
Okay, so we just march on. Let's go over the state issues. Bill Brady, why did he lose? Because I think people would say, putting it very simply, Illinois was in a mess financially, and Democrats controlled everything. The state house, the state senate, the governor's chair, the Supreme Court, and you have a mess.
And they still do.
And you still have a mess, and yet you lose, the Republicans lost for governor, only marginal gains, 6 House seats, right? And 2 state Senate seats.
Right.
The national average, I think, was something more like double that, 14 seats. 680 legislative seats changed hands nationally from Democrat to Republican, rough average 14. So why did the Republicans do so poorly here in Illinois?
Well, it's
Relative to the,
it's frustrating. No, I mean, we did poorly. Look, let's not make any mistake about it. The voters in Illinois sent a very different message to the Chicago Democrats in D.C. than they sent to the Chicago Democrats in Springfield. And it's
There's the message they're okay with the mess.
Uh,
They're okay
well-
with Mike Madigan running things.
It's a little
And
bit
then,
of
you know,
there's a little bit of bipolarity. I mean, I can see that, but here's in my mind, in my view, here's why I think Bill lost the race. And I think there's a lot of talk about particular issues.
You can call him Bill because you knew Bill because you were one of the 6 candidates running in the Republican primary.
I did, and I support him in the general. I wanted him to win, and I like him. I think he's a perfectly affable guy who was generally right in terms of the direction the state needed to go. But I think at the end of the day, Bill Brady well, you remember the question that Pat Quinn started asking about 6 weeks out from the election. He started running these commercials, who is this guy? That is a question that Bill Brady should have answered 3 months before Pat Quinn ever asked it. And I think Bill's imprint in suburban Cook County and the collars, where, bottom line, 60% of the people in the state live, just wasn't as substantial as it needed to be. And I think that was really the difference maker. In precarious economic times, people don't want more uncertainty. And I think Pat Quinn and was able to create some uncertainty about Bill that ultimately made the difference. I think it's unfortunate, but I think that's what happened. And you saw the same thing happen, the lack of definition for the Republican brand in these suburban legislative races that you're talking about. Because to be quite frank with you, we could have fallen out of bed and won 6 House seats and 2 Senate seats. That is an unacceptable performance. Indiana Republicans took back the state legislature. Minnesota, they took back the state legislature for the first time since
So
America was
what
a
was the
forest.
cause of that? So you're saying Brady didn't introduce him well, introduce himself strongly enough on TV? Would you say that?
No,
Is
it's,
that
not,
what you're saying?
it's more than on TV.
All over, he wasn't introduced strongly enough.
think
Is that
the-
your point?
yeah, I
Because
think-
Dan Curry said that too, and
That-
the two
that's-
Dans are in agreement
That's
here.
part of it. I don't think the value proposition was clear. I don't think the value proposition is clear for the Republican Party generally in Illinois. I think this
The
is
value proposition
means, by voting for you or by voting for the Republicans, I get what? The Republican Party is a
wasn't
brand.
it that they get no increase in taxes? Didn't
No.
Brady make that clear?
Well, he did make that clear, but my sense of that campaign was them, pulling out the old Dean Smith playbook and throwing the ball around the perimeter and hoping the clock ran out. And it was going to be good enough for Republicans to not be Pat Quinn and the Chicago Democrats, to not be Mike Madigan. And that's not good enough. People make a different calculation at the state level than they do the federal level. I think the Republicans could have done a better job in terms of attaching legislative races to the congressional races so that they were part of that wave vote, and they didn't do a very good job there either. But I think at the end of the day, the Republican Party brand still lacks definition in this state,
So
that's a problem.
He needed more. Brady needed more than he won't be Quinn. He won't raise income taxes.
He did need more than that.
And what did he need? What would you have said?
I just think he needed a more explicit value proposition.
Well, give me the value proposition.
Well,
he
I
should have
think
used.
one of the things he should have done. I mean, I said this early on, and it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback, but I was saying this all the way along. I mean, I think part of it is just conveying that you get it, right? Bill Brady to camera saying, "Look, I get it. This state is a basket case. You're getting hammered from every which direction. We're taking more and more, and you see less and less in return in terms of value for the taxes that you pay. You see your economic opportunities shrinking. You're very worried about the future. I get that. And so this is the course we're going to chart under Republican leadership from the governor's office. Specifically, it's more than just about cutting taxes. It's cutting taxes as a means to these ends and explaining what those ends look like to make
Growth.
Illinois an
Economic-
opportunity state again.
Economic growth, job growth, economy growth.
And also, too, I mean, kind of looking prospectively, I mean, elections are always about the future, looking prospectively about what kind of Illinois we can have if we make the right policy choices and what kind of Illinois we have currently because we've made the wrong policy choices, Republicans and Democrats.
So education reform, not just cutting spending in education, but reforming education.
Right. I mean, he let
Not
Pat.
just cutting.
He let, and that's a great.
Medicaid,
That's a
but-
great example, though. The education issue. He let Pat Quinn, run around saying Bill Brady wants to cut $1 billion out of education, and that was a ridiculous charge. What Bill should have said, rather than saying, I like teachers and I'm for education too, he should have said that's ridiculous. We have a system that structurally doesn't work. What Bill said early on after the primary about the need to rethink state government, he was right. There should have been more of that reflected in the conversation he was having with voters in the last 60 days, and I just didn't see as much of it as I think was necessary. Now, that's also not to say I thought he wasn't going to win, because I did think he was going to win. I thought he was going to get away with this four-corner offense that I'm describing, but he didn't. So I think the outcome is surprising, but it's not unexplainable.
Yeah, and do you think it was because you put it four corners offense? He basically was playing not to lose as opposed to playing to win.
I agree. That's right. Yeah.
And the people around him were very cautious. They're risk averse, and I don't think they had confidence in Bill. I mean, I knew Bill because he's on this show maybe 8 to 10 times over the years. I knew Bill Brady as a guy who makes very few mistakes, and really is not that extreme. It doesn't sound that extreme. But you know what? The people all around him, I don't think they knew Bill. I don't think they'd seen him for 10 hours, on a TV show. I'd talk with him. So they didn't have confidence, so they all put him in this bubble. And he became a poor candidate over time with these people he was paying to improve him as a candidate. I think he was a better candidate in February of 2010 than he was in November of 2010. Do you agree?
It's interesting. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but I mean, going back and thinking about the primary, and I had obviously a lot of interaction with him. We did, innumerable candidate forums and debates. I actually think he was a stronger candidate, particularly where I saw him the most, which is, in the kind of combat in the arena. I thought he probably performed stronger in some of the debates we had in the primary than he did in some of the debates with Quinn. I do think that.
Yeah, so it's the old thing about let Reagan be Reagan, let Brady be Brady.
I don't know if I'd make that exact analogy, but I think that I think the campaign did not accentuate his strengths.
Are there leaders in the wings for the Republican Party in Illinois? Because you said it was kind of my words. You said it was peculiar. What was your words? I would say it was pathetic that they only picked up 6 House seats and 2 state Senate seats. You agree?
It's unacceptable.
Tom Cross is the House leader. Is there a leader in the wings waiting to take Tom's place?
I don't-
Should there be?
I don't think, well.
Is it Tom Cross's fault or is it somebody else's fault?
Look, I mean, the problem with the Republican Party in this state is not kind of left at the doorstep of any one individual, okay? There's plenty of blame to go around, and there has been for the last decade. But I think there needs to be some accountability for performance because
Well, that means a change.
Because, well, we can't preach accountability if we don't play accountability.
Do you have anybody in mind who might do a better job than Tom Cross for state House?
You know, that's a caucus decision at the legislative level. I don't know. I have not heard of anybody that would present themselves, so it's hard to.
The state
say.
Senate race, Tom Roser got all upset a week before because he said that Christine Rodonio, a week before the election, came out and said tax increases are not off the table.
She said that on WLS radio, yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, she said not a week before, the weekend before.
The weekend before.
It was an incredibly stupid
Where
thing
was
to
it
say.
made? Where was the statement made? Just to,
It was on Bill Cameron's show on
Okay.
WLS, and it was an incredibly
so
stupid
she
thing
did Bill
to say.
Cameron's show, right? She was there doing his show?
Yeah.
That's Sunday. But Senator Rodonio won't come on public affairs. Now, why would that be? Because that gives her a
I have no
venue to
idea.
say that we should raise income taxes,
Well-
and Berkowitz might somehow not allow her to say that.
Well, I have no idea why she picks how she chooses which show she does or
But she
doesn't
did
do.
come
I
on the
don't
show
really
a number
care.
of times before. So are the Republicans afraid to state their views? Because this is something that I'm known for, is trying to get views stated, and maybe that's it. They want to hide their views.
I'm not sure the Republicans. I don't think the problem necessarily with leadership right now is an unwillingness to state their views. I think the problem is the lack of definition of those views. So it's not just a communication or marketing problem. It's what you are or not communicating or marketing. We have the same problem and the same misunderstanding of what the problem is that Barack Obama has. Barack Obama thinks the 2010 elections. It was just a marketing problem. We didn't communicate all our wonderful accomplishments well enough. Wrong.
No, but it's not completely
People got what you were doing and they rejected it. It's the same thing happening with the Republican Party in Illinois. They get what you're doing or not doing and they're rejecting it.
Okay, I got to interrupt just to say we're going to continue to speak as the credits roll, but I very much want to thank Dan Proft for coming here, sharing his views. You can catch Dan, as we said at the top of the show, all the time on WLS every Saturday from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock, right?
Yes.
12 o'clock p.m. to 2 o'clock p.m. with Bruce Wolf. It's an entertaining show, thoughtful show. You learn a lot. Listen to that. Remember to watch him, listen to him replace Don and Roma just for a week, 5 to 9 in the morning. That's the week of November 22nd. Dan is also very proud of his role as the chapter president in Illinois for Operation Homefront. That's operationhomefront.net/Illinois, right? /Illinois, a group that does a lot to help the military, or the families of the military while these folks are serving.
Active duty military families in Illinois and wounded warriors who've returned home.
All right, so Dan, going back to Obama and your tirade against Obama.
It's a tirade. I'm just explaining where he's
but
wrong.
he would say, look, he was inherited this tough situation. TARP was sort of inherited. Bush kind of gave him TARP and all of those things. And then he tried to, and the economy had gone, as you would agree, gone south considerably in 2008 with the Republicans in control. So he's saying it's not just a matter of communication, it's that people have to know the perspective as to from where he was coming. You would concede that, right?
Yeah, but that's not what he's.
I mean, if you're in the
That's not
hole
what
and
he's
you
sold.
didn't quite get out of the hole, they still blame you. They expected him to do it in 2 years. He couldn't.
Well, he created those expectations, so that's unfortunate for him. But you create expectations, and you have to live by what you've created.
No, you
Let me-
underestimated the extent of the problem. I
Well,
guess
yeah,
anybody
because he
said.
doesn't know what he's talking about, and because he was completely unprepared for the job.
Seeing Bush promote his book, would you say that Obama really is smarter than Bush? Watching Bush promote his book?
I don't care who has higher SAT scores. I care who is going
You
to
don't.
make the right policy choices.
Do you think there's a correlation between SAT scores and making the right policy choices?
No, not necessarily.